Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We have a special selection we're going to wrap today up with, and that is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's request comes from Jonathan. It says, you asked for groovy, melodic black metal with good production. Ask and ye shall receive. Immortal, Tyrants. It's not my personal favorite from them, but it 100% fits what you're looking for. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And yeah, I don't think we've heard Immortal before, but let's see what they're bringing to the table with Tyrants. Oh, really neat way right off the bat of utilizing that tremolo picking in a rhythmically interesting way. Very fuzzy, very black metal, but still everything's very clear. The guitars are isolated, the drums isolated. The vocals are right hands, with the echo kind of pulling out to the side. And there's a synth that's showing up center pan every once in a while. Yeah. Still can't get over that vocal placement. Interesting that they're not tremolo picking these whole notes. Although there was that really nice rhythmic layering there where the bass kicks were giving the attacks. Ooh. I almost thought this was a synth while it was still covered up. Obviously it's a guitar, but between the fuzz and just the waviness of it, it really is that initial attack on it that really tells me it's a guitar. Now right here we've hit full black metal form, tremolo picking, double bass kicks, lots of fuzz. We got the vocal, well they're not here right now, but they were. And now we've taken this intro riff and have overlaid constant tremolo picking over it. Yeah, once again, a little bit of variation on the idea. Yeah. That was neat. So, yeah, I mean, this is black metal, right? We have tremolo picking, we have double bass kicks, we have that raspy fry vocal. I don't quite know. It's the black metal harsh, right? I think this is a more palatable version of it. It's not quite as nasally and shrill as the genre can sometimes have, but I think overall it still retains the vibe of a traditional black metal harsh vocal. Um, we also have the fuzziness and sort of just a little bit of that grit in the overall production that kind of keeps it not from feeling super clean. But on the other side of this idea, we also have sections that play around with rhythm, where we don't just have straight eighth or straight 16th notes constantly. We have a ton of groove being introduced because of that. We have moments of just held out notes, which is kind of bonkers. The drums don't really do too many 16th note strikes throughout here up until we got to the end. We started to see some 16th notes and double bass kicks. And there's just this strong clarity of the sound sphere across this song. All the instruments are kind of placed in very specific sections, and there's plenty of room given to them so that they can, have room to stretch out and be themselves without being cluttered or overshadowed by something nearby. There's just a lot of aspects of this song that I don't associate with black metal in the way that it's composed or produced. But interestingly, it still feels like black metal to me, even in the less black metal-y compositional sections. And it all just comes together real nicely. I don't quite know if it's something I would listen to all the time, but if I was going to force myself to listen to a black metal album, Immortal might be it as a way to get into it. My first black metal album experience. Oh, that's a lie because we have done a couple on album review. So my first black metal album for personal listening, I might pick Immortal just because the production here and some of the composition stuff matches more of what I typically listen to. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. I want to look at that core riff that we start the song off. And I think it's really neat because, I've mentioned that for me, groove is typically something that's rhythmic. right? Usually some sort of syncopated element that creates a varying or an alternating emphasis between, well, an alternating element of emphasized beats and unemphasized beats, and sort of making a groove. Sometimes we can get this simply as the snare hitting on 1 and 3 or 2 and 4 in a 4/4 time signature, and just creating a bit of rhythm there, a groove there, because we have emphasized beats and unemphasized beats, which would be the ones that, the snare isn't hitting on. And then we can add in some syncopated strikes, and that'll give us this movement, this grooviness to the song. That's typically where I find groove now. We did have some people tell me during Groove Week that they find groovy stuff in very rigid ideas. And it was like a week later, and I found a song that did that for me. So I'm not saying that groove requires syncopation and varying between accented and unaccented strikes. That's just what normally works for me. But you can find groove in just about anything, depending on where your perspective and how you feel music. However, here we do find a bit of syncopated elements because and a shifting between accented and unaccented beats with the way that they play around with their tremolo picking. Unlike regular black metal, which is just constant 16th notes all the time, here we kind of give it more of a hard rock groove. And again, I don't know if that's accurate. More heavy rock. Whatever like you would consider like 2000s Pantera and Godsmack and whatever that grouping of music is. I think it's heavy rock. I call it hard rock, but I've learned that hard rock is also like 70s groups, and so maybe it's not hard rock, maybe it's heavy rock. I don't know. But Pantera kind of stuff, right? We take those ideas, those real heavy riffs, with a lot of space between them and just these punctuated strikes. But instead of playing whole notes at these punctuated hits, we tremolo pick across them. So what we get is a riff that's composed of these pockets of tremolo picking that sometimes are on the beat with the snare hit, and sometimes they're off the beat, creating a syncopated element against the groove that the drummer is laying down, and it's just really it's really good. It's a strong pocket. Like it just makes me want to, headbang or move my body or whatever. For me, it's moving my body. I don't. I guess I kind of bob my head a little bit sometimes, but I don't know. I don't really headbang. Um, but yeah, like it's creating this rhythmic idea that really makes me want to move my body, but it's doing it with the tools of black metal, which is the tremolo picking. It's just they're not playing it constantly like we typically find in the genre. It's creating these pockets of tremolo picking so we can get the idea of a groovy lick or a groovy riff while still retaining that constant attack that black metal is known for. It is kind of genius, honestly, and I want to hear more of it. I don't know how long uh, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but it kind of is maybe. Maybe it's what's that word I'm looking for? Novelty, right? Not gimmick, a novelty. I don't know how long the novelty will stay. It might wear off after a couple of songs, and either I hear it as the tremolo picking or I just hear it as the groove. But right here, hearing the two combined, just as a first time hearing this kind of idea, it's just really cool. I don't know why I never thought of this before. Like, it's just a neat combination of these two ideas of, bringing the technique of black metal into the composition of something that's a bit less oriented around consistency. And I think it's interesting that they paired that with the drums the way that they did, because the drums could have easily gone into double bass kicks that paired with the same rhythm that the guitars were playing. They could have done constant double bass kicks, but instead they went for more of just a rock beat, allowed the drums to kind of be the chill underlying element here and contrast heavily against the 16th notes found in the guitar work. So we're going to be talking about this a lot, contrasting rhythmic ideas, where here the guitars are playing fast, albeit in pockets of this speed, while the drums are playing slower. They have less attacks per bar. And that was pretty much the song for a couple of minutes there. The other thing that came in here that caught my eye though was the vocals. I'm still not 100% on board with the vocals, and I think it's primarily a weighting issue. I think if something else, well, let's get to that in a second. Let's explain what my problem is before I talk about a possible solution to it. And I say solution broadly, this is just my opinion. Um, so we have a right pan guitar, we have a left pan guitar, we have a bass and drum center, and occasionally we have what I think is a synth center. We'll touch on that in a second too. It only popped up a couple of times, so maybe it was just, I don't know, it could have been something weird going on as well. Anyways, it's fairly balanced. One guitar on each side, and the rhythm section, the drum and bass centered. That's balanced. We have everything balanced in the middle, and the things that are panned hard are one on each side, one guitar on each side. Just a balanced idea. The vocals are center right. Not too far, but far enough to feel that they're not centered. Like I said, it's not all the way right. It's not in the same realm as the guitar yet. It's just a little bit in that angle. But like I said, just enough to recognize that it's not centered. And it feels like the whole song's just kind of leaning over to the side. And I really thought that they were going to do something to contrast this. Maybe there was going to be a harmonized idea that came in on the left, or maybe an extra guitar line was going to come in on the left and do counterpoint against the vocals, or just something to balance it out, and it never did. So it gave the song this very lopsided feel from start to finish. And I'm curious, either from the group or if the producers talked about it or anything. What's going on there? It's I I thought about this a lot during the reaction. I'm still thinking about it, and I can't really figure out a reason why it would have been done other than just to do it. I just, hey, what if we just do this and it's different, right? Like forever, Immortal will immortally be set in my mind as the group that has these slightly shifted vocals, especially if I hear more songs from this album that do it. I suppose it could just be the single song, and maybe there's a thematic reason for it we'll find in the lyrics. But in my experience, bands typically utilize a single production style per album. So I would actually put my money on the fact that if I listen to anything else from this album, Sons of Northern Darkness, it's going to have similar vocal production. And I don't understand why. I can't even wrap my head around possible reasons why, other than just to stand out. So, yeah, if there's been any comments or interview about that, hit me with those links in the comment, because I'm intrigued. I think by the end of the song, I just kind of got used to it, but it's not something that I actively enjoyed. And like I said, I'm very confused about any reason why it would be done. Usually I could say I didn't enjoy that, but I understand from this perspective it makes sense to go that route. But here, I have no I don't have an inkling of a thought of why that decision was made. Now, the song also has this centered synth sound. It pops up at the end of every 4-bar phrase, I think it is. It's centered, it hits a note and crescendos up, it gets louder, and then it just kind of fades out. It does that over like a beat, maybe 2 beats tops. And it does that all throughout the second half of the first verse. I don't remember if it did it in the second verse, but it was kind of weird. At first I thought it was a guitar, maybe a tremolo picking on a higher note, but it was centered. And the two guitars were not. They were panned. So I don't quite know that it was a guitar. I don't know that it was a synth. It kind of felt like I don't know. Again, if anybody has insight into that, it was a sound I heard. I don't know what to make of it. Now, The song does explore other ideas. After we get out of this core concept that we hear at the beginning, we do explore some sections that just kind of hold notes out, where the guitars are holding these whole notes out for an entire bar. And then the second bar is a combination of half notes and quarter notes, and that's it. It's a 2 bar phrase, so the next bar ends up holding out a note again. What's interesting about this, and I talked about this earlier, in that a lot of this song is going to have rhythmic contrast, is that when the guitars are doing this, they are no longer tremolo picking. So instead of getting 16 hits per bar, we're getting just one, or like 4 to 5 in the second bar of this riff. The bass kicks are providing the 16th notes. So in the first section of this track, where our constant attacks were coming from the guitars and our drummer was kind of chilling out a little bit with the number of hits they have per bar, the opposite is true now, where the guitarists have chilled out, but the drummer is supplying the constant direction and momentum. However, unlike the first section, which had the pockets of playing against the pockets of silence in the guitars, this is straight 16th notes. This is very black metal bass kick style of composition. Interestingly, we do see this idea get transferred into, I don't know, it was like minute 4 or 5. It was close to the end, but it wasn't the final bit yet. I guess we could call it the bridge, because I do think we had like a bridge, verse, AABA. Actually, I do kind of think this followed a bit of a jazz standard. Just their B section was a more traditional rock bridge rather than a solo section. I think that's what the song felt like, though. I didn't really hear a difference between verses and choruses, but we did have the main riff, an altered idea, and then back to the main riff. That's AABA right there. We did have a section though where we had the tremolo picking and the double bass kicks going all at once, and we had like a scream to take us into this idea. Just a very stereotypical, or I guess just typical, I think is the word I want, black metal section, really going for that standard sound that the genre typically embraces, and just going all in, all instruments at the same time. And it's really neat to hear how they can take their modified version of black metal and allow it to transform into this for a moment and go into that true traditional black metal sound before bringing it back to something a bit more experimental. And I just like that kind of flow of showing that they do have a lot of experimental elements to their composition, but they're not afraid to bring back that traditional foundational sound. It's just a very neat way. Plus, it provides contrast throughout the song. We have moments where it's more elongated. We have moments that are more rhythmic. We have moments that are pure intensity with constant attacks from every instrument. It's just a really nice way to create a strong element of flow and evolution throughout your song, while paying respects to the people who made your style of music possible from both ends of the spectrum. You know, where their inspirations are from outside of black metal and their black metal inspirations. Now, with that said, I want to talk about this final moment because I think it's one of the coolest parts of this. Something I've talked a lot about in black metal, especially when we looked at black metal origins, which I guess I can forgive for it being the genesis of the genre. You're not really going to see a lot of strong iteration in something that is just being created. You can't iterate on something that isn't here yet. You kind of have to innovate it first. You have to create it before you can make version 2.0, so to speak. So, you know, something I talked about a lot, though, was just repetition. When we looked at Black Metal Week, it was very repetitive. All the verses were the same. The choruses were the same. Sometimes the verses and choruses were very similar, and I didn't even notice we changed. Which actually might have happened here. And I mentioned it's AABA, but maybe the verse and the chorus did exist. I just didn't catch on to the differences between them. But anyways, there's just a lot of repetition in some of the earlier black metal, and you still kind of can see that in some more modern black metal that replicates and has strong influences to the original stuff. Here, though, While we did have a bit of repetition in the first half of the track, after we came out of the bridge, we saw some new ideas. And I thought this was very cool. We continued to bring that constant tremolo picking into this final verse, where we returned to that groovier, syncopated pockets of playing versus pockets of silence idea in the guitars, but we brought with that a tremolo picked idea that sits above them, just continuously playing against this idea. The drums also picked up a bit more intensity from when they were at the beginning. This third verse had more drum attacks in it than we heard originally. And I just thought it was a neat way to not only have the song evolve with the composition, as we saw, the drums and the guitar were kind of contrasting rhythmic ideas. They flipped how they were contrasting, then they came together, and now we're seeing a variation of that where they're both providing intensity just in different ways. They're not everybody's doing 16th notes. And we're also seeing how we can pair the constant tremolo picking of traditional black metal with this groovier syncopated tremolo picking that we saw in the opening verse and bring them together into a line that kind of supports both ideas and just kind of works. Now, I will say I think the tremolo picked guitar, the full-on tremolo picked guitar section that we saw in this third verse didn't really fit production-wise. I felt it just kind of fit above everything else and just kind of sort of like a haze that made everything under it difficult to hear. I don't really feel like it had a place to sit. It just played in front of everybody else. And it's kind of a shame because in retrospect, we had our vocals pushed to the right. It really left an opening here in center left that this part could have been in, but instead it just prominently played over everything else. And maybe, again, is a thematic reason for it, but I think there was a really good place for it to fit naturally into the song and feel like an extension of it rather than feeling like it was performed in front of everything else and kind of blocking what we had known to come as the section. However, I still really enjoy the experimentation here of adding a new idea to this third verse. Usually when we have bands that do this, where we have a third verse or third chorus, there's no variation on it at all, and I like the experimentation of adding something new. It isn't even they could have went something simple and just added a harmony somewhere, but no, they added a brand new riff for this final minute, and I gotta support that. That's awesome right there. And I think that's it. So let's dive into these lyrics here and see if we can't pick apart anything that might tell us something. Let's see. Armored horses, gloves of steel, silver blades, time to reveal. Where the tyrants that guard the land, proud upon our gilded thrones, servants of the great ancestors who guard the gates to infinity, once kings of shadows on these blackened fields, all might and domination ruled the realms of the above. So we're speaking first person from people who are proud to be tyrants. They're also warriors of some sort. They have armored horses, gloves of steel, and silver blades. They're tyrants that guard the lands, servants of the great ancestors. They guard the gates to infinity. They were once kings of shadow. Now they rule the realms of the above. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm not really getting the angle here. Inconquerable walls, weapons of might, splendor and nobility, barbaric times, where the tyrants that guard the land, proud upon our gilded thrones, the kings at hold at their throne, immortal, invincible, the might lives on. Armies hoovered across the land, here roll the rivers of red, beyond that no man been. We're the tyrants, we are the tyrants. And then it looks like the verse 3 is the same as verse 1. Armored horses, silver blades, guard the land, gilded thrones. Oh, there's a small change. Moments of time roll deep within the mind. Thoughts roam free and endless, remembering the tyrant's time. We are the tyrants, war. We are the Tyrants. So yeah, it seems to be rather straightforward. It speaks about rulers in an older era. They called them barbaric times. I mean, that covers quite a few many thousands of years of time. So I mean, it could be a lot of stuff, but I don't know what particular era. But yeah, there are people who were tyrannical. They ruled with fear and power and control, and they're proud of that. And I guess because of what they did here in the earthly realm, they were ascended to rule the realms above. They're immortal and invincible, and their armies go across the land, creating rivers of blood everywhere, even places that no man has been before. And that's the whole story. They're just cruel people that got promoted and went and killed people in other places. And man, that is a downer after listening to a song and just praising so many elements of it. Um, but I mean, that's one of the things with art, you know? I will always defend art's right to explore dark elements of humanity. And tyrannical warmongers is a dark part of humanity. I think we should be able to explore that with art. But this is not the kind of lyrics I would want to listen to on my free time, so. Ugh. Tying that back to the music, though, I got nothing. Honestly, I would expect to hear these lyrics over more traditional black metal. I think it's just a coincidence that they have a more experimental style of black metal, both in composition and production, that really doesn't have anything to do with the lyrics. So, those are my thoughts on Immortal's Tyrants. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. Anything that stood out, anything you want to add on to my analysis, anything you want to correct me on. I had a couple questions. If you have answers to those or links to interviews or anything, hit me up. Like I said, I'm greatly interested in some of this information. Above the comment section is a description box. It'll take you to this menu right here. There's a Linktree link in the description box that'll take you to this menu. You can pick up some merch, join Patreon, join the Discord, whatever. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but we'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll check out another wild time signature and another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.